All right, so I've chosen my exposures. Whoops. And I open them up in preview to do some just really quick processing on them. Where are they? Here they are. And I played with, this is where I left off. Generally what I do with the quick processing in preview is just playing with the color temperature and then playing with sharpness, which has a really nice algorithm. This is not as good as Photoshop, but what it does is blend a lot of the coloring tools like color balance, channel mixer, even saturation into one easy interface that's not as accurate, but can show you the potential of your shot really well. And then sharpness just adds a little bit of defined contrast to edges that are most distinct. So the difference between that and my original exposure is pretty faint, but you can see how it just adds a little bit of pop to it. So I often like to use that because my lens isn't so expensive that it shoots beautifully crisp photos all the time. Okay, here's the last one. So how do I deal with it? You see these three peaks? That shows me that if I line it up a little differently, well, these peaks are off of each other for various reasons because of all the local color in the shot. But I can get to truer color in here. Then I don't like it green at all, so I want to counter that green with a little bit of the magenta. And then just play with that sharpness, and that helps bring out my in focus area. Okay, so I've got my three exposures. I'm now going to export them because in this new version of Preview, if I just close them, it overwrites my old ones. And I don't want it to overwrite my old ones. I want to save them as different shots. So depth shot, this is number 2. This one right here, to the desktop as a JPEG at its best. And then once that's saved, it's annoying you have to do this now. I'm going to use my window, the adjust color window within Preview, and then I'm going to reset everything back to my original exposure. Same thing here, File, Export, which is what used to be a save as, and this will be depth shot 1. With these changes made, and then I reset it back to my original exposure. And then we have depth shot 3, export. The reason I have to do it this way is now the newest versions of Preview on Mac, they automatically save when you close. I'm not sure why they chose to do that. I guess to make it faster for people. But I don't want to overwrite my original exposures in this case, even though I have them on my memory card as well. Okay. And then you can see the difference. And even though it's really quick processing, it can make a big difference. Okay, now I'm going to open these up in Photoshop. And thinking of my sketch, I think, how can I use processing to bring this out? So I want the first one to feel pretty ordinary and boring. I want the next one to maybe be a little bit more, maybe vignetted and romantic. And then the last one, I want it to be really kind of intimate and pretty. So this one already looks pretty ordinary and boring, but I'll make a duplicate of it. And actually, just because I'm showing you this demo, and because I already have rough processing on here, so this isn't my raw exposure, I'm going to show you how to process with adjustment layers, like we have in Actions. So instead of making a duplicate and then doing image adjustments, which are called direct adjustments, you would go to Layer and do layer adjustments. Say New Adjustment Layer, and the first one I would do is Levels. right? And what levels is, it's the exact same thing we used to do. It's just done in this little window instead. And if you want to push it to the side, you can. And I can optimize my histogram a little bit, and I can decide, do I want to brighten the midtones? Do I want to darken them? And the only difference it has, and I can limit, I think I might limit my lights a little bit so it doesn't look so glaring looking at a computer screen. Okay, and then I'm done. The only difference it has, besides doing a duplicate, is like we saw how they were used when we were doing the PhotoCubist project, anything that's underneath this layer will have those effects. So that's without them, that's with them, and then I can also play with the opacity of it. So I want it to look kind of dry and ordinary, and it does. So that's without anything, and that's with everything. So I'm actually taking kind of the contrast down a little. Okay, next, a new adjustment layer. And you can do it here under adjustments as well. You know, I can find color balance. But you could also just go to layer, new adjustment layer, color balance. Say OK. And now I can play with the color through the midtones, the shadows, or the highlights. And now in a more balanced way than I could with preview, I can go back and kind of set the color script that I want. Well, that's kind of nice. I just don't like that yellow. So I'm going to keep processing out that yellow. So maybe like that. And though my glasses aren't really seen in this frame too much, I could pick a highlight color. So like maybe the red. And so now I'll do a last adjustment layer, which is hue saturation. And instead of doing all of it and just saturating it, right, or desaturate, oh, desaturate is kind of nice. So I might desaturate all of it a little bit. It's kind of vintagey. But then I can go and I can select out just the reds and punch those up a little. And I can even kind of switch them to be a little bit more orangey red or more purple red. But by punching up the reds, like of the door, maybe, and I don't want to make this like overt, not overpowering, but it might kind of hint at possible passion looming in a boring environment. All right. And these, I can play with the opacity of them just like we could with duplicate layers and decide how much we want of each one. But I'll show you the advantage of this across a series of photos. Okay, so now I'm going to save that, and I save it as depth shot 1 PSD, because now it has multiple layers, so it's not a JPEG anymore. And I might give it my name. Okay, now I go to my next one. I want to do depth shot 2. I'm going to swoop it out so depth shot 1 is in the background. And depth shot 2 is out here. And there's many ways you can process them. But what I love about adjustment layers is what I can do is now select these 3 layers, because these aren't linked to any pixels. These are just like filters hovering over those pixels. And I can click and drag and drop these on top of this photo. And you see it makes them match. And it still gives me all of that customization possibility. So here, I kind of like having hue saturation turned off so that these colors live a little bit more. But maybe I just want to adjust those hue saturation settings. And so I'll take the master saturation and I'll push it up a little bit. But what I really want to do is I want to take the cyans and make those stronger, because that's like the book cover. See those? And I want to make the reds even stronger. I'm going to keep adding saturation a little bit for each one, and maybe even lighten the reds a little bit here. And maybe push their color a little bit oranger. So it's warming up slowly. You see that? Slowly warming up. Maybe that's a little too much saturation. So subtly warming. Now that the glasses are introduced. But I hate that lime green. That kind of throws it off. So I can try to find that green. It's probably in the yellows. Oh, there it is. It's in the greens. And I can kind of just selectively desaturate that a little. So that doesn't mess it up. Or even just switch its color a little. Make it more yellow. Take it more towards the blues. Just a little. All right, so now I can see if I agree with all these choices. I think levels can probably be a little bit stronger here, so I'll take it from 70%. Maybe I'll make a slightly different choice with it. That looks pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to save this as Depth Shot 2 PSD, which is just my quick processed exposure with all these adjustment layers on top. And then I go to Depth Shot 3, swoop that out, and I will add all of these, because I'm building it progressively, onto this. And this doesn't, this looks way too muted, right? For this big romantic one. So I'm going to take that hue saturation all the way off. I want those colors to come through. Or I can just really change it. In fact, I might just delete this one and add a new hue saturation adjustment. So layer adjustment, new adjustment layer, hue saturation. Okay, and in this, I'm going to take the master. I'm going to actually amp up the saturation a little bit. Ooh, exciting.
Oh, yeah.
But maybe that blue is distracting a little bit from the greens. So I'll just take the blues. And I always amp up the saturation a lot to see where those blues are. And I'm just going to deaden those a little bit. Right. And then the yellows, well, no, not just the yellows, the greens, I'm going to make those really a little bit stronger. Not too much, we want it to be subtle. But now that's the new element. The new force. And it counters the red. All right. Good.
Where are they?
So now I save this as my Depth Shot PSD, and that's what I would go back to make other changes, right? But if I'm happy with those, and I am at this point, then I'm going to say image. Layer, flatten. And I'm going to flatten all of these and then save them as TIFFs for a few reasons, because now I can do post-processing on them. Remember, they have to be flattened before I can run actions on them. And we never flatten our PSD files, right? Our PSD files always have the adjustments to improve them. But our TIFFs are kind of our best job doing manual processing, and then we're going to play with them with actions. Okay, and then the next demo will be about that.